Okay, colleagues, Health Committee? Health Committee? Gotcha. All right, sounds fantastic. Okay, colleagues, we're gonna move down the file list. We have still file item number 2. Ms. Mitchell, why don't we do this before you go quickly to insurance? Not right now, okay. What I'd like to do right now is if we can go to file item number 3 through number 10, file items number 3 through number 10. Can I get a motion? Again, that's files item number 3 through 10. We have a motion made by Mr. Canella. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senators Canella? Aye. Canella, aye. Leyva? Aye. Leyva, aye. Mitchell? Aye. Mitchell, aye. Runner? De Leon?
Aye.
De Leon.
Motion passes on a 4-0 vote. So we have before us for the State Board of Education, Mr. Bruce Holiday, Felisa Ortiz Licon, Nicolasa Sandoval, as well as Ting Sun. Please come on up. So welcome, Ms. Ortiz Licon, Ms. Sun, Mr. Holiday, Ms. Sandoval. Just very similar to the witnesses or the appointees who came before us just a few moments ago. If there's anyone that's in the audience today that you'd like to introduce, friends, loved ones, please do so. And then why don't we make a brief statement? So why don't we start with Ms. Ortiz Licon?
Sure. I probably have a longer list of people to recognize in my statement. I would like to acknowledge my parents, Flavia and Miguel Ortiz, my brother, Miguel Angel Ortiz, my sister, Marisabel Ortiz Lopez, her husband, my brother-in-law, Rogelio Lopez, my niece, Ariana Lopez. I have a lot of, my cousin, Dr. Leticia Marquez Magaña, my tío, my tío, I'm sorry, I don't realize when I'm speaking Spanish, my uncle,
that's okay.
Junior Lopez, and I have a lot of friends and family, but I have a special acknowledgement to a fellow educator, loving husband and my support system, my husband, Roberto Licon.
Oh, where would that be? Okay.
And my moral compass and motivation, my children, Roberto Licon and Maya Licon. Thank you.
Roberto is your son.
My son.
Your
He
son.
also goes by Bobby, so maybe that's why he's
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to read?
Well, we'll go this quickly, then we'll start with Ms. Sun.
Okay, hello.
Yes.
Hi, I don't have as large of a fan base.
That's okay, that's quite okay.
My husband in back, Charlie Leo. There.
Welcome. Welcome, Charlie. Mr. Holiday?
I have no fan base.
Okay. The men are always the lonely ones. Ms. Sandoval? No one today? No one today? Okay, that's okay. So why don't we do this? We'll start with Ms. Ortiz Licon. Make a statement. We'll go down with Ms. Sun, Mr. Holiday, Ms. Sandoval. Then we'll get into questions, commentaries, as well as answers.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Feliz Ortiz Licon, and I am honored and privileged to be considered for the State Board of Education and to serve the public school system that served me so well. From Long Beach Unified to UCLA, UC Berkeley, Cal State Los Angeles, and UC Irvine, I am the return on your investment. I have served on the California State Board of Education since 2015. I appreciate the Senate Rules Committee's consideration of my reappointment today, and I thank the governor for appointing me to serve the schools and the students of California. As a board member, my goal will be to bring continuous visibility and voice to underrepresented students and families, and to inform policies and regulations that promote and enhance equity for all students. This is important to me because I strongly believe in the transformative power of public education and fully embrace the notion that education is the greatest equalizer in society.
Good afternoon. My name is Ting Lansan. I've served as a member of the California State Board of Education since May 2015. I would like to thank the Senate Rules Committee for your consideration of my appointment today, and I want to thank Governor Brown for entrusting me to serve the teachers, students, and families of California. As a first-generation immigrant to this country and an English learner in the Texas education system when there was no support for structures for children who don't fit in the traditional box, it is especially important to me that all students have equal access to a quality public school system promised by this country. My goal is to use my 30 years of experience as a public school educator to align research, policy, and practice to best serve the children of California. And I would like to add, as a CalSTRS member, I want to thank you for your careful consideration of the board members entrusted with my retirement, so thank you.
My name is Bruce Holliday, and I've been on the State Board of Education since 2012. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm proud of the work that the State Board has accomplished over the last 4 years in partnership with the Governor's Office, the Legislature, and the California Department of Education. I'm particularly excited about the direction and the substance of the work that will be coming down the road for the State Board of Education, and I sincerely appreciate your consideration of reappointing me. I also would like to thank each of you for your important role in supporting quality education in California.
I'm Nikki Sandoval, and it's been my pleasure and honor to serve our students, our families, and our school personnel since 2013 as a member of the State Board of Education. I was educated in California's public schools from kindergarten through high school graduation. There are teachers who I remember, administrators, they cared for me, they held high expectations. However, the system did not really support them, and it certainly did not prepare me for college or for a career. So in my service as a board member, I have worked very closely with my colleagues on the board to ensure that the transformation of our public education system is reflective of collaborative decision-making, transparency, and is inclusive for a wide range of stakeholders. My hope is to continue service in this capacity to advance the educational outcomes for each and every student in the state.
Thank you, Ms. Sandoval. When we open for questions and answers, Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mr. Pro Tem. A couple of questions. Thank you for all coming and spending a little time with me in the office. I think it's important that we kind of start this conversation, and it doesn't have to be everybody, but if one of you would be willing to describe the role of the board, because many of us know very well the function and workings and perhaps members of our local school boards, but to have a state school board appointed by the governor. So could you give us a high-level, clear picture of the role, the appropriate role of the State Board of Education?
So the State Board of Education is tasked with implementing the laws established by the legislature in setting up the framework for setting priorities, important measurements, targets for our school system. Under the new local control funding formula, the LCAP rubrics, the intent is for the state to establish those benchmarks, but then let the local districts and schools establish their goals as well. So we see this as a continuous system of accountability in which the local systems, we build capacity for and spread best practices for those local systems.
So how does that happen? I'm clear about the role. And so when you talk about accountability, you established a framework. Do you have the power to hold local school districts accountable to carrying out kind of the work that you developed the framework for? How does that work this way?
Yeah, so there's, just as this is various levels of accountability, at the large level, we, well, if I could talk about our current system, the concept in the framework between the system that we are working on to implement is to establish those criteria, those priorities set by the state. And then there are varying levels of accountability as well. So as we establish that, provide the information, data, subgroup information for our locals to look at. There are levels of capacity building from the local level with parents and students, and having established some of their local goals, assessments, county offices of education as well, and then also with excuse me, the CIEE, I'm just.
California
Yeah,
Collaborative.
yeah, thank you. California Collaborative Board to work together in partnership in that, so.
So we had a great conversation just earlier today about local control funding formula. And I appreciate the varied experiences all of you have had in education. We talked about, you know, the ebbs and flows of education policy. I don't want to use the word fad, but the fads.
Yes.
You know, I am a new math baby. You know, my son will be a Common Core, you know, California educated child. So that we can all name the various strategies that were used. And so we talked about local control funding formula. And I referenced some comments that the governor made in an article, a Cal Matters article that came out earlier this month. And I'll read a section again that I want you to kind of respond to. And I referenced it in the context of a history in public education of various fads, for lack of a better term, and wondering what role the board plays in a sense of continuity and the ultimate commitment the board has to local control funding formula. And I pull his quotes out of I don't want to pull them completely out of context, but the point is we recognize the governor as the primary architect of LCFF. However, in response to several questions, he says the following. If local control was an equalizer for kids in Piedmont and Richmond, how long will it take to see the achievement gap close, if ever? Answer. How long will it take to achieve an egalitarian society? Is that even on the agenda? We have a system of equal protection under the law, but we have another system called meritocracy. Question. So there's no underlying promise to close the achievement gap? Answer. Are you talking about strict equality so that everybody will get all A's and get 1,600 on the SAT? Question. Well, at least graduating and going to college or career? Answer. Do you mean a career as a waiter? Do you mean a career as a window washer? Or do you mean something more elevated? Then who's going to do all that other work that's not elevated? Who does that? Or do we get robots for that? Give me an example of the gap we should close. Question. The gap between Latinos and African Americans and whites and Asians. Answer. It's pretty hard to do. Even in the same family, there are pretty close differences. Look, I wouldn't measure it in some perfect sameness involving people of all backgrounds, but rather it's giving people a boost who are coming into school with experiences that don't lend themselves as much to mastering the material as other people. The gap has been pretty persistent, so I don't want to set up what hasn't been done ever as the test of whether LCFF is a success or failure. I don't know why you would go there. So my question is, I'm a little concerned about the perspective of the key architect of LCFF and his attitude about whether it's going to do any significant improvement in the gap that we all know to be real. And so where does the board lie? The governor will be in office another 3 years. He will transition out. Will we have a new governor with a new vision about A, defining the gap, B, whether it's realistic to close it, or C, what the future of public education looks like in California? Where does the board fit in all of this?
I'm happy to take a first shot at that. So as we mentioned earlier during our visit with you, I think one of the words that came to me after we left your office was a bit of a quote from Cesar Chavez that says, once a person has been educated, they cannot be unlearned. And once the public knows, because of the transparency, and one of the things that No Child Left Behind did bring to us was transparency in looking at subgroup information. Once we knew that our hunch that there was disparities, that there was achievement gaps, once that was highlighted by the data as we disaggregate, you can't ignore that data. And no one could ever move into a conversation where looking at achievement by student subgroup could be a possibility again. For us on the state board, we have been very mindful of looking at the new reforms, LCFF, looking at the LCAP, looking at the annual update, looking at the evaluation rubric through an equity lens, and looking at how do we really even the playing field for students, and in particular for Latinos, African Americans, Americans and English learners, which have been chronically underachieving in our school system. So that has always been part of the conversation. That's been core to the dialogue. And I feel that not only do we have that awareness, but we have many families, students, and advocates that will make sure that that stays on this at the core of the conversation.
And foster youth. I think every piece of the system that we have been working on is focused on closing the achievement gap, whether it be the new curriculum, Common Core, NGSS, which is going to greatly improve the quality of teaching and learning in classrooms all across California. The assessment system, which looks at not simply a bubble answer to a question, but instead asks young people to, first of all, use technology, but then also to more deeply understand the question that's being asked of them. The assessment situation where we're being very cautious about which indicators we're looking to use in the accountability system, because in the past, data has hidden the truth sometimes and hidden the weaknesses and the problems with this achievement gap and the subgroups. And we need to be careful that the data really does allow us to be transparent and know what is happening and what is not. By looking at a growth model in the assessment that not only says, this is where you are, but it says you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And that's a key piece of it. Every step of the way, I think every member of the State Board of Education has been working to put together this plan that will help close the achievement gap and make quality education accessible by every child. That has always been my goal.
You know, and I'm clear that the governor and the chair of the board were visionary in their commitment and certainly determined as he approached the legislature with his vision for LCFF. I just have to say I was struck by the comments in the article, but glad to hear that you, at least as board members, remain committed. And I'm clear that all of us may have different goals and aspirations about what closing the achievement gap, what those words mean in practical application in a student's life, in a teacher's life, in a school district's life. But I appreciate your thoughtful responses on that. Moving on to another key assignment that's in your work basket, and that is the new accountability system, transitioning away from the API, which I often found so challenging and restrictive, and looking at an API score for a school that I was familiar with and yet another one and thinking, you know, that's not my experience on that campus, and recognizing that it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of appropriate measurement, because children aren't one-size-fits-all. They have different complex needs. So which performance measures, if any, do you think should have greater emphasis in a new accountability system? I know you're in the process of shaping it, but I'm curious about your thinking as board members.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Well, the system right now is being developed and refined, and there are certain indicators that are certainly being looked at closely, and one that I am very interested in having further analysis on is college and career readiness indicators. So what does it look like for a student in California graduating high school to be ready for college and career? And those are some things that really deserve further analysis so that we can see if there's a way to include that so that the data is reliable and valid. And then also in talking with our stakeholders who not only come to Sacramento to the meetings, but when we're out in communities and in the region, connecting with people at a local level. I've heard from parents and family members that there's interest in learning about indicators of parent engagement. So what does it look like for a school that's successfully engaging parents in the process of the LCAP development and evaluating the effectiveness of their investment through LCFF? So I think those are two areas that I'm interested in. While parent engagement may be best defined at the local level, perhaps at the state level we can promote further analysis so that people at the local level will have tools to use to tell their stories.
And do you think those that you just mentioned should have greater weight than test scores or some of the more historic measurements we've used?
Can I? Go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Oh, I think that's a conversation that we're hoping to have because we're looking at one coherent accountability system. And that means that we have to really make sure that we marry the California accountability system with ESSA, the requirements of Every Student Succeeds Act. And the federal government does identify those indicators that they feel should have substantial weight. They can't identify what that substantial weight is, but they do identify 4
Which should.
indicators, right? And it includes English proficiency, graduation rate, and also indicators of assessment like math and ELA. So that has already been identified. We'll have to figure out what that means in the California context, but that is a conversation that will be forthcoming.
And so that would be the floor, and in the California context, you could add to those
Yes.
Absolutely.
4. And what's the timing in terms of when your system expects to be done? Because I know we put the API on pause for 2014 and 15.
Right.
The fall.
Well, yeah,
So-
we're looking at the fall for, to have the initial framework and to move forward with that. As far as when it's going to be done, we will continue to be working on that and tweaking it. We know that there's some new data or that we've got some initial data, and for us to have more stable information and get a better picture, we will need a few more years to get more consistent data. And as I had mentioned when we had the discussion before, what I see is that we will develop the framework, and then over the years, as we collect more data, that focus becomes more sharp. So it may be still a little fuzzy at the beginning, but we've at least put our stake in the ground on what we feel are our priorities, what are important, so that we can provide indicators and road signs to our districts and our schools. And then from there, as we collect more data, be able to sharpen that focus.
And I'm hoping and assume that there will be, given the new local control focus that community is getting more and more accustomed to, that this also rolls out and there's a transition period, because all parents know how to go online and look up the API. But how you help facilitate the culture shift
Absolutely.
that trickles down so parents understand what
Yes.
guide is out there for them in making critical decisions about school placement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last question for me, Mr. Pro Tem. And it has to do with the LAUSD lawsuit with regard to LCFF. And I know I'm not going to ask you questions about the lawsuit, but public advocates and the ACLU have filed a suit claiming that LAUSD did not properly calculate its LCFF spending to improve services for low-income English language learners and foster youth. What's the state board doing to ensure that other local districts are meeting their obligations to use LCFF funds to improve services for these needy students? Are you aware of what you're doing to make sure that districts are living up to the expectation, not only to the letter of the law, but the intent of LCFF?
The state board is entirely committed to transparency. Excuse me. It is one of the things that it's been sort of a benchmark for us as we work through all of the various pieces of education reform in California. We do, currently the system is that the LCAP that the district creates has to be approved by the local county. The rubrics that will help the county understand whether or not the LCAP is sufficient, a good LCAP, that it is clear, transparent, and helping young people in all good ways, is going to be, the first draft of it will be seen in July, and then
Okay.
it should be tweaked and improved in the fall. And as a result, we hope that that will continue to give districts guidance about the need for transparency. And at the same time, the California Department of Education also it looks at LCAPs and are constantly trying to evaluate their effectiveness, or if there's a problem, We get reports, the State Board asks for reports about the ongoing success of any of these initiatives, whether it be the Smarter Balance tests or LCAPs or whatever. So we try to stay abreast of concerns and issues, and we're very open to listening to members of the public voice their concerns, and we do our best to follow up to make sure that it's happening the way we think it is happening and should happen.
And what role do you play when it doesn't?
Yes. I think that's an excellent question, and I think one of the things that we're looking at as we consider the development of the evaluation rubric, which our adoption is scheduled for prior to October, is at what point do we offer support, technical assistance to an LEA that is not fulfilling the promise of LCFF. And so that is something that is going to be developed. And we have to ensure that our students are being served in a timely manner. We can't wait, we can't delay. This can't take years before they get the support that they need. So it's more about supporting to make sure that our students are being served in the best possible way and with all deliberate speed.
Your experience is much like ours as policymakers, that we don't have the luxury to stop time while we figure out the best possible policy and then launch it and then start time again. You're building a train as it's going down the track, and kids don't get do-overs. And so, we've got to get it as close to right as possible while they're in primary school experiencing the Common Core. So I appreciate the work you do. I understand fully that it's a daunting task, and I appreciate the seriousness with which all four of you embrace the task ahead of you. And so I thank you for your time and your thoughtful responses. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Cannella.
So we've already talked, but it's just some follow-up questions. Could you each give me your view on charter schools, number one? And number two, how involved should your board be in the monitoring of charter schools, and what additional accountability requirements, if any, should be required of them? So any order is fine.
We'll start with charter.
One of my roles on the
Yeah, go ahead.
One of my roles on the State Board is the charter liaison, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. I'm sorry. Can you hear? I'm sorry. First of all, everyone on the State Board is pro-quality school. I don't think any of us are pro one particular type of school, as long as it is a quality school. In the state of California, there are now 1,200 charter schools. In this past year, an additional 80 came online, so to speak. Over 500,000 young people choose to go to charter schools, and their families choose to have them go to charter schools. It obviously is a desirable type of school. Many of charter schools are desirable for many families and many parents. As a member of the State Board, we are interested in all schools in California being quality, whether it's a charter or not. In particular, though, the State Board of Education does not monitor every charter school in the state. That is not our role. Instead, we are a part of an appeals process for charter schools that either are denied or non-renewed at the local and county level, the district or county level. They have the opportunity to come to the State Board on appeal, and that's when we become involved. Right now, we have 26 charter schools that came up to us on appeal that we did approve, and those schools are authorized by the State Board. These are the schools that we monitor. These are the schools that, the charter schools that our partner in this California Department of Education helps us monitor. And we also have had to revoke some charters that were under our auspices, and we've also certainly denied a number of appeals over the period of time that I've been on the board.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
For you, yes.
Okay, So as a charter school founder, I'm very appreciative of the charter law that allowed me as a school teacher to be able to expand a lot of the practices that I was doing in my classroom. It gave me as a teacher, as a professional, agency to be able to take some of those great practices I was doing in my classroom and be able to expand them on a school-wide basis. As someone who has been involved in charter schools movement since the very beginning, I know that charter schools are not the magic bullet. It was never meant to be. It was, chartering is a tool to allow, at the local level, some ways of spawning innovation. And so that is the intent of charters, and you don't have a good school without a good vision and a theory of action. And so if one were to take on the responsibility of chartering, one needs to take on the accountability of making sure that you follow that vision and you set forward your theory of action and you hold yourself accountable to those goals. So that's my essence of
Okay,
what
thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo what has been said already by my colleagues. I believe in strong quality educational models. I believe charter schools can be an avenue for that. I'm actually here with a couple of charter operators that are good friends and affiliates of my full-time job with NCLR. I do, however, will scrutinize any model that is not properly serving students. And so for me, it's not necessarily are you charter or non-charter, but are you serving your students well?
Okay.
I also am an advocate for quality education, and I also do appreciate the fact that charters can bring alternatives to students and families, because one size does certainly not fit all. And as far as our monitoring, our role is very clear under the law, and anytime we are evaluating a charter, that a petition for appeal or a revocation, there's a very specific set of criteria that we are bound to in our evaluation.
Great, thank you. So we talked a lot about minority students and the struggles that minority students have, and I represent a high minority area that has lots of struggles, and so I very much appreciate that discussion. But we talked about another statistic that was brought to me, and it was actually brought by the Community College Board, and it shows that 74% of incoming students to our community colleges are not prepared to do college math or English. Now, there's a question on that number, and maybe that's old metrics, and now that we're into Common Core, maybe it's going to get better, but that's a pretty high number. I mean, community college especially. So I know you were all shocked to hear that and maybe still disbelieve it, but there's clearly a problem. If it's 74% or 64%, I mean, we need to do a better job making sure that our kids are ready for either four-year college, community college, or to go out and work, right? So what kind of things can we do differently, and what would be the role of the board to work with school districts to bring that number up? Or down, rather, I guess. Bring it down. It'd be easy to bring it up. Bring it down.
Yeah, I think under the new Common Core standards and new assessments that we have been working on, there's more communication than ever between K-12 education and community colleges and colleges. Right now, the new PSAT, for instance, is aligned to the Common Core, and so this fall was the first admission of that new results. I can tell you from my school results, our PSAT results for our juniors actually paralleled very well with the results of our CASP test last year. So I think as we're looking at the alignment, not just at the K-12 level, but reaching beyond K-12, there's kind of a better understanding of what expectations, what the skills are required for success after high school.
I agree. I think that it's important for us to look at the continuum of education, starting with preschool, K-12, and post-secondary, and really make attempts to align that. And vertical articulation is important because those elementary or preschool students will be our elementary school students, which will be our college students. We've seen great examples with the Long Beach Promise and other similar collaboratives, and I think that should be replicated throughout the state.
Any other thoughts? Okay. Last question. So teaching, the noble profession, I mean, some of the biggest impacts in my life have been teachers and my kids as well. You can see that connection and they really thrive. But I don't think we pay teachers enough. I think I think we could do better. And so consequently, we're having a teacher shortage, and it's not really your role necessarily, but what can we do to attract teachers, more teachers to our public school system?
I think one of the ways to addressing the teacher shortage and the teacher shortage issue that we're facing right now, a couple of things. It's attracting teachers, but also retaining the good teachers. And part of the board's work is working with the Department of Education and providing curricular resources, professional development opportunities, clarity on some of the goals and tasks that are before us, the assessments that we have approved for California, providing support for teachers to be able to understand how to teach in a very different and very new way and also meet the state's expectations. And I think a lot of that helps with that. And I also see the board working in partnership with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing and working in conjunction with community colleges and universities in addressing what we can all do to support teachers.